Hi everyone. We're going to talk about the topic of rate tables in this video, which is a proportional reasoning concept. So you could write proportions for these. We're going to use what we call scale factors, just kind of scale up these numbers to find the missing numbers in the table. These two tables are totally different from each other, so we're going to focus on just the first one here. So this says that there needs to be 70 miles that can be traveled on 2 gallons of gas. So if you want to go backwards down to 1, we got to find a scale factor from 2 down to 1. Well, 1 to 2 would be times 2 this way. So going backwards would be the opposite of that, which is why it's dividing by 2. It's using a scale factor backwards. So if you take that 78 and just simply divide it by 2, you're going to get 39, which is the unit rate. It's per 1 gallon of gas. So 39 is going to go here. And again, this is the unit rate because it's per 1 of the other thing. So 1 gallon of gas. So that tells us that for every 1 gallon of gas, we can go 39 miles. So if we're working on to the next part here, 178 becomes 156. Again, we got to try and find a scale factor there. So take 156 divided by 78, and you will get a scale factor. That is actually just 2 again. Happens to work out like that. So this is times 2 this way. So in this part of the table, this would also be times 2. So 2 times 2 would be 4. So on 4 gallons of gas, you can go 156 miles. We can skip the next one here because 9 through 51 is already filled in. We can jump to 12. So with 12 here, we can scale up to 12 in different ways. We could go 1 to 12, we could go 2 to 12, or go 4 to 12. It actually doesn't matter. I'm just going to be kind of unique here. Let's go from 2. Why not? So let's go from 2 to 12. So we got to find a scale factor that goes from 2 to 12. Well, you just do 12 divided by 2, and that's 6. So the scale factor is times 6. So we're going to take the number for 2, do times 6 to that, and we'll get the number for 12. So we're just going to take 78 times 6, our scale factor, and we get our answer here, 468. Okay, now for the next one, we're going to again look for a scale factor. I don't know what goes in this box here, so I'm going to go back to the unit rate. If you're not sure what to use the unit rate. So from this rate here, I'm going to scale up all the way to there. So I'm going to take 546 divided by 39 to get my scale factor there. So that's going to give me 14. So this is times 14. And here's the great thing about the unit rate. If you use the unit rate, times 1 is really easy. So 14 times 1 means that this answer here is 14. So that's how we use the rate of 2 gallons of gas to 78 miles to then scale up and find the missing values in this rate table. Let's do a couple more examples. So for this one here, we don't have the unit rate, as you can tell, because there's no 1 showing up for hours. If you'd like to, you could find that first. That might be easier. You could just kind of do what we did before. 2 down to 1 would be dividing by 2. So divide this by 2, and you get your rate. What we're basically doing is taking 1,114 miles, and we're dividing that by 2 hours to give us how many miles in 1 hour. So we're dividing this by 2, we're dividing this by 2, and that will give us our unit rate. Oftentimes this is the easiest thing to start with because you can scale up the unit rate much easier. So that's 557 miles per hour. So 557. So then if I want to go to 6, well, I could go from 2 or go from 1. 1 to 6 would be times 6, or I could go 2 to 6 times 3. It doesn't really matter, just pick one. I'm going to go 2 to 6 because I already had that here. So that's times 3 here. So take the 1,114, do that times 3, and we'll get our answer here, which is a very large number in a very small box. 3,342 in that box. Okay, moving on to the next one. I'm going to go from the unit rate this time, so 557 up to this one. So I'm going to take 5,013 divided by 557, and that will give us our scale factor. So that gives me 9. So this is times 9. So then 1 to 9, or 1 to the missing number, is obviously times 9 to 1, which is why I said 9 there, because 1 times 9 is 9. Okay, for the next one, 10, well, we got options. We can go from the unit rate, we can go from 2. 6 and 9 are going to be kind of hard to use because we're going to have decimal scale factors, but you could use those. I'm going to use, again, just 1, because that's easy. So 1 to 10 would be times 10. So this 1 to 10 is times 10. So 557 times 10 is 5,570. And there we go. Then to 11, you could do the same thing. 1 to 11 would be times 11. So then this 557 times 11 would be our last answer. So 557 times 11 is 6,127. Now you could just add on 557 here from the last one, because that was 10 to 11, which is, if we know it's 1 hour and 557 miles is the unit rate, you could just do a +1 here and a plus 557, because that's 1 more hour. Either way, you'll get the same answer, so it doesn't matter which way you do it. All right, one more example here. Again, we don't have a unit rate yet, but we've got this rate of 42 vases in 3 weeks. If we divide that out, 42 divided by 3 to give us 1 week, that's really just dividing by 3, which is 14 vases per week, which is actually the first box, because there's 14 vases. That must be for 1 week. If you want to check your work here, if you do times 3 here and times 3 here, it does work out. So our unit rate is 1 week, 14 vases, or 14 vases every week. So for the next one, for 98, let's find a scale factor here. It doesn't really matter which one you use. I'm going to just pick the harder one just to show you what happens if you use a harder number instead of the unit rate. Let's try and go from 42 to 98 here. So 98 divided by 42 to find our scale factor. We're going to get a decimal. That's okay. 2.3 repeating. Keep that 2.3 on your calculator. That's the scale factor. We're going to apply that to the 3 to get our number of weeks. So with it on the calculator still, I'm going to hit times 3, and I'll get you 7. So there we go. So you can use it even if it's a decimal scale factor. It still works out fine. Usually just easier to use the unit rate if you have it. To go to 10 here, again, I could use the unit rate or I could use any of them. I'm going to make it easy on myself here. I'm going to use the unit rate. Oop, too far. 1 to 10 would be times 10. So 14 to this one would be times 10, 140. That's why I like the unit rate, because it's pretty easy to use for anything. And then for the last one, 224, again, we could use any of these. Just to show you that, I'm going to use the last 2 here. So I'm going to use these 2. I'm going to figure out that scale factor and use it here to the 11 to find the answer. To get this scale factor, it's always the new one that you're pointing to divided by the old. So new over old, we're pointing to the new one with the arrow. So 224 divided by 154 is our scale factor. If it's a decimal, that's okay. No big deal. It is a decimal, 1.45 repeating. Keep that on your calculator. And then just hit the time sign after you've got that on your calculator, and then put an 11, and you'll get right to the answer, 16. So keep that around your calculator if it's a crazy decimal, and then just do times the next number, and you've got it. So that's how we use a rate given in our table to complete a rate table, by just finding scale factors